Hi, I'm Zarina Matcha, and you're watching Non-Feminist Gal. Spain recently passed a yes is yes law, determining that sexual consent can only be given when a woman gives a firm yes. This law was passed after 5 men were accused of raping an 18-year-old woman. The woman was silent and unconscious, so because she didn't say the word no, it was not legally classed as rape, and the men were instead charged with sexual assault. I do have mixed feelings about this law. On the one hand, I do think it's important and wonderful for the safety of rape victims. However, on the other hand, I can see this being part of an ongoing attempt to create distrust between the sexes, which unfortunately has been amplified by feminism. One of the largest contemporary ideas pushed by feminism is that we live in a rape culture. This is the idea that society normalizes rape and enforces a narrative that women are permanently unsafe due to the constant threat of rape. It's ironic that men invented societies to protect women from rape. Rape is an unfortunate and horrible part of life, and it's far more likely to happen in a society that is run by chaos and lawlessness, rather than one which has a firm legal system. Women are more likely to get raped than men because we are physically weaker than men, and because men also have a higher drive for sex than women. This is just a fact. But it's also a fact that most men don't go around raping women because years of social governance and order have conditioned men to manage their sexual desires in a way that is safe and consensual towards women, as opposed to being able to just take a woman whenever they want. This is one of the reasons why I very much support prostitution. It gives men who are unable to naturally attract a girlfriend or willing sexual partner a place to have consensual sex with a woman, as this is part of her profession, rather than coercing some unwilling female into sleeping with them. The type of men that do commit rape are usually mentally ill or have antisocial personalities. This is not common or ordinary human behaviour. According to statistics, 1 in 4 women in the UK are raped. However, when reading the UK rape crisis statistics, it states that sexual assault is used as an umbrella term to include attempts of each: rape, assault by penetration, sexual assault, and indecent exposure. These statistics aren't only covering actual times when a woman has undergone non-consensual sexual penetration. They are including attempts of this, and sexual assault, and whatever is meant by indecent exposure, which I assume includes a man flashing his dick at a woman. None of these things are positive for a woman to undergo, and none should be or even are encouraged by society. However, putting indecent exposure in the same category as rape is incorrect. It contributes to a narrative we are sold that claims that all men are rapists and that all men desire to forcefully have sex with a woman against her will. I myself have been a victim of a form of sexual trauma, but it was not rape or even sexual assault in the legal sense. This doesn't make it any less traumatic, but selling this narrative that all sexual trauma is the same as rape, which is a legal crime, becomes dangerous. Under these statistics, and indeed Spain's yes is yes law, I must now wear the label of rape victim. Yet it's false to label what happened to me as rape. It was a very traumatic and horrible thing to undergo, but it certainly was not rape. Pushing women into that label is unfair, and it's also unfair on men because it accuses them of being something they are not. Based on one horrible experience and according to feminist logic, I have every reason to hate men. Yet for this one bad experience with a guy, I've had over 10 positive ones. This is because most people are not nasty people. Most men are not rapists, and most men do not want to inflict any form of severe pain or discomfort on a woman during sex. Most men want a woman to enjoy sex and enjoy it when a woman enjoys sex. If they didn't, what would be the point? Sex is supposed to be something that is enjoyed, not something to be feared. It's one of the best things in life. Most men don't actually want to treat women like shit. Most people are decent people and have a basic sense of humanity and compassion. Consent is obviously very important when it comes to sex. I completely agree with this. However, what feminism often fails to realize is that humans are ambiguous, and women are often more ambiguous than men. Human beings are not robots. People often don't behave rationally. Women are more complicated than men due to our emotional wiring. Women often say and do things that go against what they want. For example, women often pretend not to be interested in a man or play hard to get, as a way to try and get the man to pursue her more. Women will dress in overly sexual ways and then become angry when they receive attention for dressing in those ways, even though deep down they do very much receiving this sort of attention and would never admit it in public. Most heterosexual women do want to be physically desirable to the opposite sex, especially men whom they are in relationships with. Feminism doesn't understand that female behavior is often complex and non-straightforward. I do think this is a problem. I do think that women should work on becoming more rational and more direct, as women often tend to communicate with subtlety rather than directness. However, feminism doesn't encourage this. It doesn't encourage women to be rational or direct. It encourages us to become angry and to vilify men, rather than firmly stand up for ourselves and have a more rational approach to life. If a woman definitely does not want sex, she should give a firm no. Women should learn that we have this power and this agency, and also that the majority of men do respect this. Most men don't want to harm women or cause women severe pain and emotional discomfort. Most men would rather know where they stand and would rather the woman be honest with them. But even then, sometimes people just aren't that straightforward. In long-term monogamous relationships, female sexual desire does tend to wane. Women often feel less interested in sex the longer they are married and in long-term relationships. It's normal for women to have sex with their man even when they don't particularly feel like it. This is because men typically have a higher desire for sex than women. This is also why in many cultures, a lot of men had multiple wives and mistresses. Both men and women tend to get bored with long-term sexual monogamy. Doesn't mean that people can't enjoy monogamy or that monogamy is wrong. I'm just saying this is a fact. Monogamy is still a rather new phenomenon in human behavior, as our early tribal ancestors were a lot more polyamorous. Women who don't want their man to look elsewhere for sex will often comply and compensate by trying to make sex more interesting or having sex when they're not really feeling up to it. This isn't the same as being raped. It's about compromise, something that is common within a marriage. Moreover, this is usually done of the woman's own volition and her own free will. By the way, I am aware that marital rape is a genuine problem and it is horrible. However, most husbands do not rape their wives. According to one 2018 Scottish study, 23% of women were assaulted by a partner or ex-partner, 24% were assaulted by a family member, and 44% by another known person. According to the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network in America, 39% of rapes are committed by an acquaintance, and 33% are committed by a current or former spouse, boyfriend, or girlfriend. In both these cases, rape commonly occurs from someone who is an acquaintance of the victim. Neither specify or differ between a current and ex-partner, or whether the victim was married to the perpetrator. There is one 1985 study I found done in Boston. Of the sample size, only 3% of married women reported forced sex, compared with 25% of separated women and 20% of women who are cohabiting. Statistics aside, most husbands simply don't force their wives into sex against their will, unless they're raised in a society like Saudi Arabia or other Middle Eastern societies where spousal rape is excluded from the law due to Sharia. Unfortunately, there are secular non-Western countries such as China, India, and Haiti where spousal rape is not yet criminalized. But in most liberal, non-religious, egalitarian societies, spousal rape is illegal. And even so, most men would not force their wives or girlfriends to have sex with them against their will. This is because most men are not rapists. Most people have empathy, and empathy prevents others from inflicting harm onto others. On the one hand, laws like the Yes is Yes law are important to protect women. But long-term, do we want to reach a state in society where people need to sign a contract or state, I consent to this, into a microphone before they hop into bed with someone? This could potentially lead to policing people's behavior and insisting that people need legal or verbal written agreements between doing something as natural as sex. Sexual consent is very important. I definitely think that any woman or man who is taken advantage of sexually deserves sympathy and support. But I also worry about creating a future where there is distrust between the sexes and lack of harmony. Women need to remember that men don't want to hurt you, they want to bang you. Consensually, at your enjoyment as well as theirs. That is kind of the point of sex, otherwise everyone would just sit in their rooms and masturbate. I'm not sure that these messages empower women or that they help us to move forward. Instead, they reinforce a sense of victimhood within us and make us believe that we are in constant danger. I worry that this will make it easier for women to falsely accuse men of rape or to make women view ourselves as victims when we haven't actually been victims. Hurt feelings and feeling upset or misused is unfortunate, but it's not the same as being a legitimate victim in the legal sense. I think it's far more empowering for women to learn how to stand up for ourselves and take responsibility, and also to have more agency during sex. But I don't think that the feminist notion of automatically believing women and that all men are potential rapists is good or at all helpful for society or modern gender relations. But what do you think? Is this law a good idea? Can it be looked at more positively or more negatively? Do you believe that we live in a rape culture? Let me know below. For further discussion, consider joining my Facebook group Liberals Against Feminism. Link is in the description. Thank you for watching.